The St. Louis Cardinals have made their first big trade of the Chaim era, and Sonny Gray is headed to the Boston Red Sox. What did the Cardinals get back in the deal, and was it ultimately a good one for Chaim as he gets the rebuild underway in St. Louis? We'll talk about it coming up on B-Schaeff Daily. What's going on, everyone, and welcome into this edition of B-Schaeff Daily. Brenden Schaeffer with you Tuesday, November 25th, 2025, and the rebuild is underway for the St. Louis Cardinals. How about this news? We've got a trade to talk about. The Cardinals reportedly, it's been widely reported, I don't believe it's been officially announced yet, but it will have been by the time you're listening to this. Cardinals have traded Sonny Gray to the Boston Red Sox for two pitchers. Richard Fitz, also known as Dick Fitz, maybe, if the Dick fits. Anyway, Richard Fitz and Brenden Clarke, who is the number 5 rated prospect according to MLB Pipeline within the Boston Red Sox system. Left-handed pitcher, Brenden Clarke, the prospect, and Richard Fitz, a right-hander, who has appeared in the big leagues for the Red Sox over the last couple of seasons. The Cardinals are also sending to Boston $20 million, as reported by Chris Cotillo, covers the Red Sox for Mass Live. And that's about half of what the Cardinals would have owed Sonny Gray. So breaking down the contract, it was a 3-year deal, and in the first 2 years, the Cardinals paid Sonny Gray a little bit less. Year 3 was due to be $35 million here in 2026, and there was also a $5 million buyout on a 2027 option that the Cardinals would have owed to Sonny Gray. So basically, they came into this knowing that they owed him $40 million. If the Cardinals were not able to trade Sonny Gray, they would have had to pay him $40 million. Now, the reason I offer that as the context at the beginning of this conversation is because I saw some reaction already on Twitter and in the comments of our live video. I went live for like 45 minutes right before this with Joe Roderick for STL Sports Central. That was a lot of fun. Go check that out as we reacted live to the trade. But I still wanted to double back for B-Schaeff Daily and kind of lay out my thoughts in the solo pod, as I often do. But I saw some comments from folks that were saying, oh, the Cardinals had Sonny Gray and they gave him up for nothing. And they're paying $20 million for him to not play for them. I saw that on Twitter. Well, if you're going to do a rebuild, why wouldn't you save money? Isn't that what a rebuild is about? I want to contextualize all of it for you and explain in detail why I believe this was a pretty good move by Chaim when you consider everything as part of the context. Because, yeah, in a vacuum, depending on your perspective, you might look at it and say, okay, so the Cardinals had Sonny Gray. That was their number 1 starter for their rotation, and they give him away, and they're paying $20 million for him not to play here, and all they got back is a guy with a 5 ERA last year and a prospect who had a 5 ERA in high A ball? You know, what's going on here? That could be a perspective. I don't think that's the right perspective, but that could be one's perspective. I want to lay out the context, and if that's the way you're feeling about this trade, maybe I'm able to change your mind a little bit. That's why I bring up the $40 million, because at the very beginning of this, what you have to understand is the Cardinals were obligated to pay that. And in a rebuild year where they're not going to contend, guys, like if they do, it's going to be an upset. It's going to be, they're the underdog in 2026 because they won't have a high payroll. They won't go out and get a bunch of talent that's going to make them better compared to last year when they couldn't quite get over the hump, right? You remember last year, 2025. So knowing all of this, it doesn't really make sense for the Cardinals to pay Sonny Gray $40 million to pitch for them so that they can win, and I'm just throwing numbers out here, 78 games instead of 74, right? Like Richard Fitz, Dick Fitz, if you will, and he's going back and forth, I think, over whether he prefers Richard Fitz or Dick Fitz. I don't know. A lot of guys in sports with interesting names will sometimes maybe say, I want to go by this or I want to go by that. Well, we will honor once Richard Fitz comes in and says what he wants to be called. We'll honor that on the podcast. But for today, plenty of Dick Fitz conversations going on around the social media sphere after this deal. And I think the other guy I was thinking of was Richard Lovelady, was a pitcher for the Royals. He's been around. At one point said, I want to be known as Dick Lovelady. And so that's what they called him. I don't know the preference for Richard Fitz, but But Fitz can go right into the Cardinals rotation this next year and take the spot of Sonny Gray. I don't know that he will. I'll explain what could potentially happen that would make him not be in the rotation. But Richard Fitz had a 5.00 ERA last year in 11 games. He started 10 times for the Red Sox, 45 innings, 40 strikeouts. Year before that, 1.74 ERA in 4 starts, 20 innings, 9 strikeouts. So this is not necessarily your big swing and miss prize of this trade. And spent a little bit of time, I would imagine. I haven't looked into everything with Richard Fitz just yet, but on the injured list last year because he only made 6 starts at AAA and 1 at AA, so that was probably a rehab start from an injury. But had a 4.3 ERA in his 6 AAA starts, almost a strikeout per inning there. Like a perfectly suitable arm to cover some innings for a 2026 Cardinals team that, again, at the beginning of it, they're not going in and telling you we're going to win a World Series this year. Like they're just going to try to cobble together a season and be as close to respectable as they can be with the performance of this club. But while you had a $40 million obligation to Sonny Gray, you only had 1 year with which to work in order to extract value for that. And I believe that Chaim Bloom took what is a obligation and something that you could view a little bit negatively for a team that, like, my gosh, why would we need to pay this guy $40 million to pitch so that we can still not make the playoffs, right? Like, when we signed him to the contract, we being the Cardinals, we hoped that we would be in playoff contention for the 3 years that we had him, but we're not now. And so you're trying to get out from under it and save some money. If they reallocate the money toward other players on longer-term deals that don't just benefit you for this one lost season, then great. If they save the money, if they pocket it, great for the owners, not really great for the fans, but understandable in a rebuild year that they might take a step back in payroll. Disappointing, but we've already talked about contextualizing where they're at and where they're going to be. So, okay, you're trying to trade Sonny Gray. Here are your limitations. You can only go where he wants to be sent, and so that's going to be a limited list of teams. And when you get together with one of those teams and find that they have interest in your player, you have to answer a couple of questions. How much do they want to pay him to play for their team? And then the Cardinals have to cover the rest of that contract. And this isn't the Red Sox signing a free agent. Like, okay, the Red Sox want Sonny Gray. Perfect. Chaim Bloom obviously has familiarity with the Red Sox. It's interesting that neither of these guys were in the Red Sox system when Chaim Bloom was there. Brenden Clarke was drafted in the 5th round in 2024. Richard Fitz was acquired via trade from the Yankees late in 2023, like December, I want to say. So I don't think Chaim Bloom was there for either of those. It just is kind of like ironic, kind of funny, because we would assume, we're trading with the Red Sox because Chaim Bloom knows their farm system. Well, yeah, but didn't end up being applicable in this trade. But the Red Sox say, yes, we want Sonny Gray. The Cardinals say, that's great. What can we have? Well, how much are you willing to pay? And there's that little do-si-do, that negotiation that has to happen. I want to say this out front. Credit to Bill DeWitt. Credit to Cardinals ownership, because in a Sonny Gray trade where you owed him $40 million, there was a way for this trade to go. It was a way where you get a non-top 30 prospect in the Red Sox organization back for Gray, and you do that because you want them to pay down as much of the contract as humanly possible. Like if Cardinal ownership would have said, we don't want to eat cash here, just try to get rid of the contract as best as you can, Chaim, that would have meant you don't get back a pitcher with big league experience like Richard Fitz, who I'm not saying is Cy Young, but he has 60 some odd big league innings to his credit at a sub-5 career ERA in those 65 innings. Doesn't blow you away, but it's something, right? It's actually a 3.97 ERA for him because he had 4 good starts in 2024. So you get that arm back who is completely controllable through like 2031, right? He's got basically no service time, not even a year, I don't believe. So you have him controllable for a long, long time. And you pick up this left-hander, Brenden Clarke, who's 6'4", 220, was listed as the number 5 prospect in the Red Sox system. He's raw, but he's got potential. There was an article on MLB.com from mid-November, like 9 days ago, that said he could be a breakout prospect in 2026. The article by Brandon Weinrib is titled "Why Brenden Clarke Could Be a Breakout Prospect in 2026." And he lays out the status for him, the fact that he's got some tantalizing stuff, not much of a track record, had Tommy John as a junior in high school, thoracic issues, forced him to redshirt in his only season at Alabama, went to the State College of Florida for a couple of years. So he's had injuries. He's had a checkered injury history for sure. Doesn't have great command. Had 27 walks in 38 innings at high A and only threw a strike 56.8% of the time, putting him in the 6th percentile of minor leaguers. So just absolute wild thing. I mean, think Ricky Vaughn in Major League, right? But he's got some stuff. He's got a really good fastball and maybe an even better slider. Could be a future closer if he can dial in the command. Maybe he develops a third pitch and sticks as a starter. Brandon Weinrib, writing in his article from a couple of weeks ago, as I mentioned, evaluators are split on whether he'll stick as a starter in the majors. Could build up some stamina. He's 6'4", so he could put on even a little bit more muscle, build up his frame, develop a third pitch. Brandon Weinrib writes, if he's able to sharpen his command, especially on the fastball, and improve his curveball or changeup to become league average, you're looking at a starter with the flashes of brilliance along the lines of Francisco Liriano. If he doesn't, his fastball-slider combo could give you maybe a Tanner Scott, good reliever for the Washington Nationals over the years, and then I believe has been with the Dodgers. He said, worst-case scenario, if his velocity backs up, he could still be a swing man like a Sean Newcomb. So those are some comps that they're throwing out there. Again, long way to go because this is a guy that pitched at high A ball this last season, had 3 starts in low A, pitched really well, and then got bumped up. 27 walks in 38 total innings between low A and high A, which is a ton of walks. But he also had a ton of strikeouts, 43 strikeouts in 28 innings in high A, had 17 Ks in 9 innings of low A. That's 60 strikeouts in 38 innings. He's got a 14.2 strikeout per 9 rate last year. So he's upside, like just pure unadulterated upside and tons of risk. But that's what we call a lottery ticket that's worth chasing, right? The Cardinals got him, the number 5 prospect. Again, Red Sox have a pretty solid system, and according to MLB Pipeline, he was their number 5 prospect. Granted, they graduated several of their guys to the big leagues last year, and so others were obviously able to move up their list, but a tantalizing arm, I think, for sure. And I don't think you get him. I don't think you get a guy like Richard Fitts who you can plug into your rotation directly. I would pencil him into the Cardinals starting 5 as of this moment. Just considering he had a 5 ERA last year with 10 starts in Boston. Yep, that'll play for what the Cardinals currently have. The Cardinals, though, will not be done seeking starting pitching. That has been my prediction. I've already seen Jeff Jones tweet out that, yeah, they're going to still be looking to add more starting pitching to where you come into spring training with 6 or 7 or 8 guys that viably could compete for 5 spots. McGreevy's going to be in there. Liberatore's going to be in there. And that's about it. Like Palante would have the inside track, but if he doesn't perform well in spring after not performing well this past season, who's to say that Richard Fitts, a solid right-hander, doesn't beat him out? Richard Fitts will be pitching in his age 26 season, I want to say. Yeah, he turns 26 in December, so a little less than a month from now. But he's not ARB eligible until 2028, not a free agent until after 2031. Like, this is great. You got a controllable arm, 6'3", 230 pounds. A guy that can plug into your rotation and be competing for a spot at a minimum. More news that's come out. By the way, if you were to look on the Cardinals depth chart on their official team website, you'll see Kyle Leahy listed among the top 5 starters. He's going to be in the rotation next season, if not at least in the competition for it when we get to spring. Jeff Jones also tweeting about that, said a source said that Kyle Leahy's just being considered a starter. He is in this bucket, which we have said, we've been saying that since early 2025. Like, stretch this guy out, see what he can do. They're going to do that. And I think Kyle Leahy, if he can land, can be more than like a number 5 starter. He could be a solid middle of the rotation arm for the Cardinals, in my opinion, if he can hold up over the workload of a starter. So because the Cardinals were able to or willing to eat some of this money, and they're going to pay $20 million, but the cost savings is $20 million because they were going to be obligated to pay $40. So they cut that in half. They add Richard Fitts, who goes right into their rotation competition in spring. They add Brenden Clarke, who's a 6'4" left-hander, throws 100, I'm assuming. Great fastball, great slider. Really interesting arm if he can stay healthy. And they don't have Sonny Gray, clogging up a spot where they know he's not going to be on the team by the time they're ready to compete again. So I would call this a winning trade for the Cardinals. Again, you have to contextualize it within what was possible. They weren't going to get, a superstar back on a cost-controlled deal for 1 year of Sonny Gray at a bloated contract. No, they're going to pay down half the contract, and their willingness to do so means they're getting pieces back that they can use and that are controllable. That's called rebuilding on the fly and doing it effectively. I think $20 million is the perfect amount to be paying, by the way. Like if Sonny Gray were a free agent right now, I think he would sign a 1 year, $22, $23, $24 million deal probably based on what he's been. And the Red Sox are kicking in an extra $1 million, so he's actually going to make $41 million in total. Reorganizing his contract a little bit, he's making $31 instead of $35. He's going to make $31 million this year, but the buyout on the option goes from $5 million up to $10 million. So deferring that a little bit if you're Sonny Gray. And basically getting an extra $1 million in total compensation to do so, to agree to the trade, etc. It's kind of what happened with Arenado when the Cardinals dealt for him. The player, their agents are pretty good. They usually, even if they want to be traded to a place, they usually get to say, well, I do have the leverage. Can you add me a kicker? A little extra money to agree to do this, and that's what they do. But I think the Cardinals end up getting pieces back that they can use, one piece that they can use in Richard Fitts. And again, get 2 more guys just like him, because then all of them can come into spring training and compete for like 2 spots, or even 3 if you count Palante's to be open, which I do. Right now it's Palante, like you've got McGreevy and Liberatore, 1 and 2. Palante, Kyle Leahy, Richard Fitts. That's 3, 4, 5. But if you add 2 more, then that's 7 total guys, 5 of them competing for 3 spots. The cream rises to the top, which is to say the Cardinals will still be trying to win as many baseball games as they can this year. That's operating in the margins, though. That's Chaim Bloom when he says we're not going to concede anything about our present day, but we're always going to be operating with the future in mind. That's what this looks like. Because maybe Richard Fitts comes out and he stinks. And they say, well, we got what we reasonably could for Sonny Gray. We paid down a little bit of the contract in order to get some interesting arms back. But this guy stinks. He's not going to be on our rotation this year. Or maybe he continues to develop as well, because we've got in this St. Louis organization Larry Day and Rob Cerfolio and Matt Pierpont. And these are the guys that are going to be heading up our development group. And we're going to get more out of pitchers. That's how the Cardinals are thinking under Chaim Bloom. That's exactly what you want them to be thinking. Maybe Richard Fitts is a guy that's in the rotation for the next 3, 4, 5 years because he's controllable. This is how it looks, guys. I think it's a really, really solid get for the St. Louis Cardinals today in picking up these 2 pitchers and getting Sonny Gray somewhere that he wanted to go play, and knowing that the Cardinals aren't really striving for contention this year. It makes sense that he's traded first of the 3 among Gray, Contreras, and Arenado, because I think Gray was the combination of willing to go, which is maybe not as much the case with Wilson Contreras. He'll have to be compelled to be dealt and agree to a trade. Willing to be traded somewhere, and also has value because he's still a pretty good pitcher. Arenado, not as much value because of his decline offensively, so that'll be a little bit trickier to get done. But the Cardinals were able to, I think, get a really fair deal done that matched exactly what they're looking to do right now. So that's my breakdown. I think it's a solid move for the Cardinals. Many more to come. Continue to add players like this, like a Richard Fitts, that can compete in their rotation and give you innings. Because maybe somebody loses out on their rotation spot, but they're a long man out of the bullpen because they're just going to have to cover innings a little bit creatively in 2026. That's solid enough. No, the Cardinals' win total didn't go up today. It went down. Sonny Gray's a good pitcher, but this was never about winning more games. It was about reorganizing for a future in which they can do so. So let me know your thoughts, Cardinals fans. Those are mine. We'll continue breaking down all things the Cardinals do this offseason. Appreciate you guys as always for listening, and we will talk to you next time on B-Schaeff Daily. Peace.